In a quiet little town where everyone knew each other's business, Maya Patel thought she had found her happily ever after. She married Arjun, the man she fell in love with during college. He was charming, kind, and seemed like the perfect partner. For months before the wedding, Maya dreamed of building a beautiful life together, filled with laughter, shared dreams, and endless support. But soon after they tied the knot, reality hit her hard. Arjun's mother, Mrs. Meera Patel, moved into their home shortly after the honeymoon ended. At first, Meera appeared sweet and helpful, claiming she wanted to guide the newlyweds through married life. However, it didn't take long for Maya to realize that Meera wasn't there to help, she was there to control. From the way Maya folded laundry to how she cooked dinner, nothing escaped Meera's sharp tongue. Every small mistake became an opportunity for criticism. "This dal is too salty," Meera would say at dinner, shaking her head disapprovingly. Or, "Why are you wearing such dull clothes? You look like you don't care about your appearance." Maya tried to brush off the comments, telling herself that Meera just needed time to adjust. But things only got worse. Meera started meddling in every aspect of Maya's life. She questioned why Maya spent so much time writing late at night, calling it a waste of energy. "You should focus on being a good wife," Meera would snap, "not chasing some silly dream." The constant judgment wore Maya down, making her feel like she could never measure up. At first, Arjun acted as a buffer between his wife and his mother. He'd laugh off Meera's remarks or reassure Maya that she was doing fine. But over time, he stopped defending her. Instead, he began agreeing with his mother. During family dinners, when Meera criticized Maya for not keeping the house spotless, Arjun chimed in, saying, "Mom's right. We need to keep things cleaner." Each word felt like a stab to Maya's heart. How could the man who promised to love and protect her turn against her so easily? What hurt most was how Arjun treated Maya in front of others. At gatherings with relatives and friends, he openly mocked her struggles, laughing along with Meera's jabs. Once, Maya accidentally burned a batch of rotis while trying to multitask. Rather than helping her fix it, Arjun rolled his eyes and said loudly, "I guess I'll have to teach you how to cook all over again." Everyone laughed except Maya, who stood frozen in embarrassment. That moment carved itself deep into her memory, a reminder of how alone she truly was. Despite everything, Maya held on to hope. Maybe if she worked harder, proved herself worthy, things would change. So she cleaned more diligently, cooked more carefully, and avoided arguments. Yet no matter what she did, Meera found new reasons to criticize her, and Arjun, instead of standing by her side, continued to belittle her efforts. It was as though they were determined to break her spirit bit by bit. But Maya wasn't broken, not yet. Beneath the surface, anger simmered alongside her pain. She couldn't understand why her husband and mother-in-law refused to see her worth. Slowly, a question began forming in her mind. Was this really the life she deserved? The day Maya had been planning for months finally arrived. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind where everything seemed ordinary on the surface, but carried an undercurrent of tension beneath. Maya woke up earlier than usual, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She had packed her bags in secret over the past few weeks, hiding them under a spare bed in the guest room. Now, as sunlight streamed through the curtains, she knew there was no turning back. Maya moved quietly around the house, gathering the last of her things. Her laptop, notebooks filled with scribbled ideas, and a few cherished photographs from happier times. Every movement felt deliberate, every decision weighed carefully. She left behind clothes, jewelry, and other possessions that once held meaning, but now felt like anchors tying her to a life she desperately wanted to escape. This wasn't about material wealth. It was about freedom. Before leaving, Maya sat down at the dining table and wrote a letter. Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed pen to paper, but her words were clear and unwavering. "Arjun and Meera," she began, "I'm leaving today, and I don't plan to return. For too long, I've stayed silent while you both treated me as if I were nothing more than a burden or a failure. I've tried to make this marriage work, to be the person you wanted me to be, but I can't live like this anymore. You've taken away my voice, my confidence, and my peace, but you'll never take away my spirit." She paused, rereading the lines to ensure they conveyed exactly what she wanted to say. Then she continued, "This is not goodbye, it's good riddance. Don't try to find me because you won't succeed. And remember this, you underestimated me. I hope someday you realize just how much you lost by pushing me away." Sealing the envelope, Maya placed it prominently on the kitchen counter where they couldn't miss it. With one final glance around the house, she picked up her suitcase and walked out the door without looking back. The sound of the front door clicking shut echoed softly, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As Maya drove away, her mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. Would Arjun and Mira come after her? Would they call her family or friends to track her down? She had thought through every possibility, cutting ties with anyone who might inadvertently reveal her whereabouts. Her new apartment was rented under her pseudonym, and she paid 6 months' rent upfront in cash. No digital trail connected her old life to her new one. She had covered her tracks meticulously. By mid-afternoon, Maya reached her destination, a modest one-bedroom apartment tucked into a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it was hers. As she unpacked her belongings, she felt lighter, as though a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying had finally lifted. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, to imagine a future built entirely on her own terms. That evening, Maya stood by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Tomorrow would bring challenges, finding steady freelance clients, promoting her upcoming book, adjusting to solitude. But she welcomed them. These struggles were different. They came with purpose and promise. Unlike the pain inflicted by Arjun and Mira, these obstacles would shape her into someone stronger, braver, and freer. For now, though, Maya simply smiled. She had done it. She had escaped. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning of their reckoning. The days following the disastrous dinner party, Maya began to shift her focus inward. She realized that if she wanted to survive, and eventually thrive, she needed something that belonged solely to her, something they couldn't touch or take away. That's when she turned to her writing. For years, Maya had dreamed of becoming a writer, but life with Arjun and Mira left little room for such ambitions. Now, fueled by pain and determination, she poured her heart into her work. Late at night, after everyone was asleep, she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, typing furiously. Her novel wasn't just fiction, it was her story, disguised as a tale of resilience and courage. Each chapter became a release, a way to process everything she'd endured while imagining a future where she could be free. Maya knew she couldn't rely on her husband or mother-in-law for support anymore, so she started looking for ways to earn money independently. During her research, she discovered freelance writing platforms online. At first, she hesitated. Could she really make enough to sustain herself? But desperation pushed her forward. She created a profile using a pseudonym, careful not to reveal her real identity. Within weeks, small gigs began trickling in: blog posts, product descriptions, and social media content. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady income, and every paycheck gave her more confidence. Arjun and Mira, however, grew suspicious of her late-night activities. One evening, as Maya typed away on her laptop, Mira stormed into the living room. "What are you doing up so late?" she demanded, peering over Maya's shoulder. "Don't tell me you're still wasting time on that silly book." "It's none of your business," Maya replied calmly, closing the lid of her laptop. Her tone caught Mira off guard. It was firmer than usual, lacking the deference she typically showed. For a moment, Mira looked taken aback, but then she scoffed. "You'll never amount to anything with these childish hobbies," she muttered before walking away. Arjun noticed the change in Maya too. He confronted her one morning as she prepared breakfast. "Why are you spending so much time on that computer?" he asked, his voice laced with irritation. "You're neglecting your responsibilities around here." "I'm doing what I need to do," Maya said simply, refusing to meet his gaze. Her calmness unnerved him. Normally, she would apologize or try to explain herself, but now there was a quiet strength in her demeanor that made him uneasy. Despite their attempts to intimidate her, Maya pressed on. She submitted her completed manuscript to several publishers under her pen name, hoping against hope that someone would see its value. Weeks passed without any news, and doubt crept in. What if no one liked it? What if all her effort went unnoticed? Then, one afternoon, an email arrived. Maya opened it with trembling hands. A reputable publishing house loved her manuscript and offered her a contract, along with a generous advance. Tears streamed down her face as she read the message over and over again. This was it, her ticket out of this suffocating life. With renewed energy, Maya finalized her plans. She saved every penny from her freelance work and the book deal, knowing she'd need funds to start fresh. She secretly rented a small apartment in another city, far from anyone who knew her. As the pieces fell into place, Maya allowed herself a rare moment of hope. Leaving wouldn't be easy, but staying meant losing herself completely. Every night, as she packed her belongings bit by bit, Maya reminded herself why she was doing this. Arjun and Mira had underestimated her, thinking she was weak and helpless. But soon, they would learn just how wrong they were. Maya's patience was wearing thin. Every day felt like a battle she couldn't win, and the constant criticism from Mira was suffocating. Arjun's silence only made things worse. He no longer even pretended to defend her. Instead, he seemed to have fully aligned himself with his mother. One evening, after another long day of being belittled, Maya decided to confront Arjun about their future. She sat him down in the living room, her voice trembling but firm. "Arjun," she began, "I need to talk to you about something important. Your mom, she doesn't seem to think I'm good enough for this family. And honestly, sometimes it feels like you agree with her." Arjun sighed, clearly annoyed by the conversation. "Maya, stop overreacting. Mom just wants what's best for us. She has experience. We should listen to her." "But what about what I want?" Maya asked, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Do you ever think about how I feel? I can't keep living like this, always walking on eggshells, afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing." Before Arjun could respond, Mira walked into the room, overhearing the tail end of their discussion. Her sharp eyes narrowed as she glared at Maya. "What's all this nonsense?" she demanded. "Are you trying to turn my son against me?" "No, Mom," Arjun quickly interjected, avoiding eye contact with Maya. "She's just upset because we're asking her to be a better wife and daughter-in-law." Maya's heart sank. Once again, Arjun had taken his mother's side without hesitation. She realized then that no matter how hard she tried, she would never be enough for them. That night, lying awake in bed, she replayed their words in her mind. They wanted her to conform, to give up her dreams and identity entirely. But deep inside, she knew she couldn't let that happen. The breaking point came during one of Mira's infamous dinner parties. The house buzzed with guests, relatives, neighbors, and friends, all chatting and laughing. Maya, dressed neatly despite feeling out of place, carried a tray of drinks into the dining area. As she reached the table, her foot caught on the edge of the rug, and the glass of red wine in her hand tipped over, spilling onto Mira's prized silk saree. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Maya, who stood frozen, mortified. Mira gasped dramatically, clutching her stained saree. "How dare you!" she exclaimed, her voice dripping with venom. "This is an expensive piece. Do you even care about anything other than ruining things around here?" Arjun, standing nearby, didn't say a word. Instead, he looked away, pretending not to notice the tears welling up in Maya's eyes. The guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering behind their hands. One relative even muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Poor Arjun, having to deal with someone so clumsy." Humiliated beyond words, Maya retreated to the kitchen, her cheeks burning. She leaned against the counter, gripping the edge tightly, trying to steady herself. This wasn't just an accident. It symbolized everything wrong with her life. To these people, she was nothing more than a failure, someone unworthy of respect or kindness. As the party continued in the next room, Maya made a decision. She wouldn't stay in this toxic environment any longer. For years, she had hoped things would improve, but now she saw clearly they never would. She needed to take control of her life, even if it meant leaving everything and everyone behind. That night, after the guests left and the house grew quiet, Maya stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced with plans. She thought about her unfinished novel, sitting untouched on her laptop, and the freelance writing jobs she'd been too afraid to pursue seriously. A spark of determination ignited within her. If Arjun and Mira thought she was weak, they were wrong. They had underestimated her, and soon they would regret it. Years rolled by, and Maya's influence only grew stronger. Her memoir, Rising from the Ashes, continued to inspire millions worldwide, translated into dozens of languages and adapted into a documentary series. Schools included excerpts from her books in their curriculums, teaching students about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of standing up against abuse. Maya herself became a household name, a beacon of hope for anyone who felt trapped or undervalued. She poured much of her earnings into her foundation, expanding its reach to rural areas where women had little access to resources or support systems. Through workshops, counseling programs, and financial aid initiatives, she empowered countless women to reclaim their lives. Many of them wrote to her personally, sharing stories of how her work had changed their trajectories. One letter stood out. "Because of you, I left my abusive marriage. Today I run my own business and can finally provide for my children. Thank you for showing me that freedom is possible." Meanwhile, Arjun and Mira faded further into obscurity. Their small apartment slowly fell into disrepair, mirroring the state of their lives. They rarely ventured outside, fearing judgmental stares or whispered comments. Friends and family members who once flocked to their lavish gatherings now avoided them entirely. Even distant relatives cut ties, unwilling to associate with people whose names carried such stigma. Mira's health continued to decline, both physically and mentally. She spent most days sitting alone in her room, staring blankly at old photo albums filled with pictures from happier times, family weddings, festive celebrations, moments before Maya entered their lives. Each image mocked her, a painful reminder of everything she had lost. The vibrant woman who once commanded respect was now a hollow shell of her former self, consumed by regret. Arjun, too, struggled to find purpose. His odd jobs barely covered expenses, and the weight of failure pressed heavily on him. He often wondered what might have been if he had chosen differently, if he had stood by Maya instead of succumbing to his mother's demands. Late at night, he replayed conversations in his mind, imagining alternate outcomes where he defended Maya, earning her trust and love instead of driving her away. But no amount of wishing could undo the past. One day, while scrolling through social media, Arjun stumbled upon a video of Maya giving an interview. Dressed elegantly and radiating confidence, she spoke passionately about forgiveness and closure. "I forgave them not because they deserved it," she said, smiling softly, "but because holding on to anger would have kept me tied to them. Forgiveness freed me." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For the first time, Arjun allowed himself to truly reflect on his actions. He realized that Maya hadn't just moved on. She had transformed her pain into something beautiful, using her experiences to help others. In contrast, he and Mira were stuck, prisoners of their own making, unable to escape the consequences of their cruelty. That night, as he sat beside his mother in their dimly lit living room, Arjun broke down in tears. "We ruined her life," he choked out, his voice trembling. "And in doing so, we destroyed ours too." Mira looked at him, her eyes clouded with sadness. For a brief moment, She opened her mouth as if to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she turned away, clutching a worn-out photograph of their family. It was a silent acknowledgement of the truth they both knew. They had pushed away someone extraordinary, someone who could have brought light into their lives, only to be left with darkness. As the years passed, Maya's name remained synonymous with strength and triumph, while Arjun and Mira became cautionary tales whispered among neighbors and acquaintances. Karma, subtle yet unyielding, had delivered its final blow. And though Maya never sought revenge, she couldn't deny the quiet satisfaction of knowing that justice, in its own way, had been served. Years passed, and Maya's life flourished in ways she had once thought impossible. Her memoir, titled Rising from the Ashes, became an international sensation. Unlike her first book, which was fictionalized, this one told her story exactly as it happened, her struggles, her escape, and her journey toward healing. Readers around the world connected deeply with her honesty, hailing her as a symbol of strength and resilience. Bookstores couldn't keep copies on the shelves, and talk shows clamored to have her as a guest. Maya embraced her role as an advocate for women facing similar challenges. She traveled across countries, speaking at conferences, universities, and community centers. Her speeches were powerful yet relatable, filled with practical advice and heartfelt encouragement. "You are stronger than you think," she often said. "No matter how dark things seem, there is always a way forward if you refuse to give up." Women approached her after events, tears streaming down their faces, thanking her for giving them hope when they felt hopeless. Back in her old town, Arjun and Mira lived in quiet misery. The modest rental apartment they now called home felt like a prison, not because of its size, but because of the shame that lingered within its walls. Their days revolved around avoiding judgmental stares at the grocery store or awkward encounters with former friends who barely acknowledged them anymore. Even family gatherings excluded them. Relatives whispered about how their cruelty had driven Maya away, leaving no room for sympathy. Mira tried to cling to fragments of her past pride, insisting she had done nothing wrong. But late at night, when sleep eluded her, she replayed memories of how she'd treated Maya. Each recollection brought fresh waves of guilt and regret. She began losing weight, her once commanding presence reduced to a frail shadow. Doctors diagnosed her with stress-induced health issues, prescribing medication and therapy, but nothing could ease the burden of her conscience. Arjun fared little better. His career stagnated despite numerous attempts to rebuild his professional life. Employers hesitated to hire someone tainted by scandal, and freelance opportunities dried up quickly. To make ends meet, he took odd jobs, manual labor, delivery services, anything that paid the bills. It was humiliating work for someone who once held a respectable position in society. At night, he laid awake wondering where he had gone so horribly wrong. He remembered the early days of his marriage, when Maya smiled freely and looked at him with love in her eyes. Had he truly been blind to her pain? Their isolation deepened when Maya announced plans to donate most of the settlement money from the divorce to organizations supporting victims of domestic abuse. News outlets covered the story extensively, highlighting her generosity and commitment to helping others. For Arjun and Mira, it was another blow. They realized Maya wasn't just surviving. She was thriving while actively working to uplift those in need. Meanwhile, they struggled to pay rent and put food on the table. One evening, as they sat together watching television, a news segment aired featuring Maya discussing forgiveness and moving on. On screen, she appeared radiant, confident, and at peace. When asked if she harbored resentment toward her ex-husband and mother-in-law, she shook her head. "I don't hate them," she said calmly. "What they did taught me my worth. I wouldn't be where I am today without going through that chapter of my life." Arjun stared at the screen, tears welling up in his eyes. For the first time, he fully understood the magnitude of his mistakes. He turned to Mira, his voice trembling. "We broke her spirit. And look at what she's become without us. We lost everything because we refused to see her value." Mira didn't respond. She simply lowered her head, unable to face the truth. Karma had delivered its verdict, and they were left to live with the consequences of their actions. While Maya soared to new heights, inspiring millions along the way, they remained trapped in the ruins of their own making. A stark reminder that treating others poorly often leads to self-destruction. Months passed, and Maya's life transformed in ways she had once only dreamed of. Her novel, Shadows of Silence, hit the shelves and quickly became a sensation. Readers connected deeply with its raw portrayal of emotional abuse and resilience, praising Maya, under her pen name, for her courage and honesty. Critics called it a masterpiece of modern storytelling and an anthem for women everywhere. The book soared to the top of bestseller lists, earning Maya both acclaim and financial stability. But what surprised Maya most was how her story resonated with so many people. Messages poured in from readers around the world, sharing their own experiences of hardship and survival. Some wrote about leaving toxic relationships. Others spoke of enduring years of mistreatment at the hands of family members. Through these messages, Maya realized her journey wasn't just personal, it was universal. She had given a voice to those who felt silenced, and that realization filled her with purpose. As her fame grew, Maya began making public appearances. At first, she hesitated, fearing judgment or exposure. But as she stepped onto stages and faced audiences eager to hear her speak, she discovered a newfound confidence. During interviews, she spoke candidly about overcoming adversity, encouraging others to believe in their strength. Her words inspired countless women to take control of their lives, whether by pursuing their passions, standing up to abusers, or simply refusing to settle for less than they deserved. Back in her old town, however, news of Maya's success reached Arjun and Meera in the worst possible way. Friends and acquaintances started recognizing bits of their lives in the pages of Shadows of Silence. Conversations at social gatherings turned awkward as people speculated aloud if the characters were based on real people. One neighbor even joked during a party, "That mother-in-law in the book sounds exactly like you, Meera." The comment sent murmurs rippling through the room, leaving Meera fuming and humiliated. Arjun, meanwhile, struggled to process the reality unfolding before him. He read sections of the book, his stomach sinking as he saw glimpses of himself in the antagonist, a selfish husband who chose loyalty to his mother over love for his wife. Friends began avoiding him, whispering behind his back about how he treated Maya. Even colleagues at work distanced themselves, uncomfortable associating with someone portrayed as a villain in such a widely celebrated novel. Meera, unable to bear the scrutiny, lashed out at anyone who dared mention the book. "It's all lies," she shouted during one particularly heated argument with a relative. "Maya is ungrateful and dramatic. We gave her everything, and this is how she repays us." Yet, despite her protests, doubt crept into her mind. Had they truly been as cruel as the book suggested? Was their behavior really so shameful? The final blow came when local newspapers picked up the story, running features on Maya's rise to success. Headlines like "From Abuse to Bestseller." The inspiring journey of pen name dominated social media feeds. Neighbors gossiped openly, pointing fingers at Arjun and Meera. Their once enviable reputation crumbled under the weight of public opinion. Invitations to gatherings dried up, and even extended family members stopped visiting, unwilling to associate with the disgraced duo. For Maya, watching from afar, it was surreal. She hadn't written the book seeking revenge, but seeing justice unfold in its own way brought her a quiet sense of satisfaction. Still, she refused to let bitterness consume her. Instead, she focused on building a brighter future, not just for herself, but for others like her. Every interview, every speech, every message she sent to fans reminded her why she had fought so hard to break free. And yet, deep down, Maya knew this wasn't the end. Arjun and Meera might have suffered socially, but the legal consequences of their actions were still looming. For now, though, she allowed herself to savor this moment of triumph. She had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her voice, and nothing could ever take that away from her again. With her newfound strength and confidence, Maya decided it was time to settle the score, not out of vengeance, but for closure. She filed for divorce, citing emotional abuse as one of the primary reasons. What followed was a legal battle that shook Arjun and Meera to their core. Armed with evidence she had meticulously gathered over the years, recorded voicemails where Meera berated her, emails showing Arjun's dismissive attitude, and even witness testimonies from neighbors who had seen how they treated her, Maya presented an undeniable case. Arjun and Meera were blindsided. They had assumed Maya would fade into obscurity after leaving, never expecting her to fight back so fiercely. When served with court papers, Arjun panicked, calling Maya repeatedly in a desperate attempt to negotiate. "Can't we work this out?" he pleaded during one phone call. "Do you really want to ruin everything we built?" Maya's response was calm but firm. "You ruined what we had long before I left," she said. "This isn't about revenge, it's about justice." The trial became a media sensation. Reporters flocked to cover the story of the best-selling author taking on her abusive ex-husband and mother-in-law. Every detail emerged in open court. How Meera had belittled Maya daily, how Arjun had sided with his mother instead of protecting his wife, and how both had systematically stripped Maya of her self-worth. The courtroom buzzed with tension as witnesses recounted moments of cruelty that painted a damning picture of Arjun and Meera. Meera, once proud and domineering, crumbled under cross-examination. Her sharp tongue turned feeble as lawyers dismantled her defenses. For the first time, she faced accountability for her actions. Arjun, too, struggled to justify his behavior. When asked why he hadn't supported Maya, he stammered, I thought she'd change if we pushed her enough." His words only highlighted his failure to see Maya as an equal partner. The judge ruled decisively in Maya's favor. Not only was the marriage dissolved, but Arjun and Meera were also ordered to pay substantial damages for emotional distress. The financial blow hit them hard, forcing them to sell their spacious home and move into a modest rental apartment. But the monetary loss paled in comparison to the social fallout. Friends, relatives, and acquaintances distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with people now labeled as abusers. Even Meera's close-knit women's group stopped inviting her to gatherings. Their reputations shattered. Arjun and Meera retreated into isolation. Meera spent most days indoors, obsessively reading articles about Maya's success while muttering bitterly to herself. Once known for her commanding presence, she now seemed like a shadow of her former self. Arjun, meanwhile, found it nearly impossible to rebuild his career. News of the trial spread within professional circles, making employers hesitant to hire him. He applied for job after job, only to receive rejections or no responses at all. As weeks turned into months, paranoia consumed them. Every knock on the door sent their hearts racing. They feared Maya might return to confront them further. In truth, Maya had moved on, focusing on her writing and advocacy work. She established a foundation aimed at helping women escape abusive environments, channeling her pain into purpose. Yet the mere mention of her name continued to haunt Arjun and Meera, serving as a constant reminder of their mistakes. One evening, as they sat together in their cramped living room, Arjun broke the silence. "Do you think we deserve this?" he asked quietly, staring at the floor. Meera shot him a glare, though there was no real anger behind it. Just exhaustion. "Of course not," she snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. Deep down, they both knew the answer. Their actions had consequences, and karma had finally caught up with them. Though Maya never intended to destroy them completely, she couldn't deny feeling a sense of vindication. They had underestimated her resilience, believing she would remain trapped forever. Now they were paying the price for their cruelty, and learning the hard way that treating someone poorly often comes back to haunt you.